Alberto Salazar was born on August 7, 1958 in Havana, just 1 year before Fidel Castro marched into power, overthrew Batista, and sent Cuba into a revolutionary tailspin that would shake the entire Caribbean. His father, Jose Salazar, had once believed in the revolution, enough to fight alongside Castro in the early days. But belief curdles quickly when reality kicks in. As Castro's regime began revealing its iron grip, Jose saw the writing on the wall and broke from the movement. That decision came with consequences, big ones. Being anti-communist in post-revolutionary Cuba was like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. The air was thick with paranoia, and friends disappeared like they never existed. Jose knew he couldn't raise a family in that kind of silence. So the Salazars fled, first to Connecticut of all places. Imagine the cultural whiplash. 1 minute you're in Havana heat, dodging political purges. The next you're trying to make sense of American suburbs and snow shovels. Eventually they settled in Massachusetts, a state with better schools, more jobs, and fewer people asking, so what part of Mexico is Cuba in? Alberto became a U.S. citizen, yes. He spoke the language, ran the races, saluted the flag. But let's not get it twisted. His blood, his fire, that relentless drive, that came from the Caribbean. From the island where survival meant outsmarting not just your opponents, but often your own government. He was raised between salsa music and Little League, between Spanish warnings at home and English expectations outside of it. And like many children of the diaspora, Salazar lived in the stretch, caught between the places parents whispered about with aching nostalgia and the land he had to conquer just to be seen. He was American by passport, but inside, he was forged in a far more complicated crucible, one where identity wasn't handed to you. You had to run for it. Alberto wasn't just another track kid. He was a phenom. At Wayland High School and later at the University of Oregon, he displayed an almost mythical endurance. His early races were raw, emotional, sometimes even self-destructive. In one now legendary college race, he pushed himself so hard in 90-degree heat that he collapsed at the finish line, requiring IVs and medical attention. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to leave pieces of himself on the track. His style wasn't beautiful, but it was brutal. And it paid off. In the early 1980s, Alberto Salazar was the king of the marathon. He won 3 consecutive New York City marathons, 1980 to 1982. He won Boston in 1982 in what many still call the greatest marathon ever run, the so-called Duel in the Sun, where he barely outpaced Dick Beardsley in a blistering final stretch. He was named Male Athlete of the Year by Track and Field News. At just 24, he was being called the future of American distance running. But just as quickly as he rose, the cracks began to show. Salazar suffered from injuries, burnout, and health problems. The same body that carried him to victory began to break down. His career as an elite athlete was effectively over by the time he was 27. But his story wasn't. If Alberto couldn't run anymore, he would teach others to fly. He became one of the most prominent running coaches in the world, the mind behind Nike's Oregon Project, an elite training group designed to revive American dominance in distance running. Under his guidance, stars were born. Mo Farah, 4-time Olympic gold medalist, Galen Rupp, Olympic medalist, Kara Goucher, Mary Cain, and more. His methods? Intense, experimental, sometimes painful, but effective, or so it seemed. Nike trusted him. Athletes swore by him. And Salazar was hailed as the mad genius of modern distance running, until the shadows came rushing back. In 2019, the U.S. anti-doping agency dropped a bombshell, not the someone tested positive kind of bombshell. No, this was a full-scale explosion that lit up the entire running world like a flare in the night. Alberto Salazar, the once revered supercoach and mastermind behind Nike's Elite Oregon Project, was hit with a 4-year ban for violating anti-doping rules. And we're not just talking about a tainted supplement or a sketchy protein shake. The allegations were wild. Testosterone experiments conducted like he was auditioning for Breaking Bad. Olympic edition, pushing the boundaries of medical ethics and creating a pressure cooker coaching environment that some athletes, especially young women, described as toxic, abusive, and soul-crushing. He wasn't just trying to build champions. He was, allegedly, playing mad scientist in Nike-branded running shoes. Then, in 2021, things went from bad to permanent. Safe Sport, the independent body tasked with investigating abuse in American sports, handed Salazar a lifetime ban after reviewing allegations of emotional and sexual misconduct. Salazar, for his part, denied any wrongdoing. But at that point, denial was doing about as much damage control as a Band-Aid on a forest fire. In just a few years, Salazar had gone from Olympic heights to absolute disgrace. From podium photos to courtroom headlines, from running legends to cautionary tale, Nike, sensing the storm, quietly shut down the Oregon project, like a restaurant closing at midnight when the health inspectors parked outside. Athletes who once praised his genius began to distance themselves, some with heartbreak, others with relief. And the legacy he'd spent decades sculpting, medal by medal, mile by mile, began to crack, collapse, and turn to dust. What started as the story of a Cuban-American immigrant running toward greatness was now a painful example of how far someone can fall when they believe they're untouchable. So who is Alberto Salazar when the cameras are off, the medals are boxed up, and Nike's no longer footing the bill? Well, for starters, he's a husband married to Molly Salazar and a father of 2 sons. That part of his life has always been relatively private, sheltered from the bright lights of Olympic glory and media storms. You won't find them giving interviews or making TikToks about their dad's tempo runs, which, frankly, might be for the best. He's also a practicing Catholic, a detail he's never shied away from. In fact, faith has always been central to how Salazar saw himself, as a man with a mission, a higher calling. For a while, that meant molding champions. Later, well, it meant surviving the fallout. And speaking of survival, let's not forget, Salazar literally died once, or came close. In 2007, he suffered a massive heart attack while at work at the Nike campus in Oregon. His heart stopped, flatlined. They had to shock him back to life. Not to be morbid, but when you've been clinically dead and come back, a doping scandal is probably just another he'll repeat. As for money, Salazar's net worth is estimated at $1 to $2 million USD. Now, that's not pocket change, but considering he ran Nike's crown jewel of elite distance running, it's not exactly Bezos level. Let's just say he could afford a nice house, a few pairs of Vaporflies, and maybe a legal team on retainer, but he's not buying islands. Still, what Salazar had was never about wealth. It was about control, legacy, and winning by any means necessary. And in the end, it's those very qualities that may have undone him. Today, he's a divisive figure. To some, mostly those who benefited from his coaching. He's a fallen genius, a hard-nosed strategist who simply pushed too far in a sport where everyone's already on the edge. To others, he's a walking red flag in running shoes. A cautionary tale about what happens when performance trumps ethics and when athletes are treated more like lab experiments than human beings. Because the truth is, there's a fine line between training and torment. And when glory becomes the only goal, that line doesn't just blur. It disappears. And Salazar? He sprinted right over it, stopwatch in hand, legacy on the line, and apparently no one willing or able to tell him stop. Alberto Salazar's story isn't easy. It's not the kind of glossy feel-good, look how far he came, underdog tale we love to package with dramatic music and slow-mo montages. It's messy, human, Caribbean, in the most complicated sense. Because like so many from our region, from Kingston to Port of Spain to Havana, Salazar came from struggle, political turmoil, immigration, reinvention. He didn't just cross borders, he crossed identities. He ran from revolution into a country where he had to prove, perform, and win just to belong. And for a while, he did win. Big. 3 straight New York City marathons in the early 80s. A Boston Marathon title. He coached Olympic medalists, broke records, and had Nike's money, science, and full corporate muscle behind him. But then, like the best Icarus stories, he flew too close to the sun. Except in this case, the sun was probably spiked with testosterone gel and carrying a Safe Sport subpoena. He rose fast, fell even faster, and left behind a legacy that now asks more questions than it answers. Like, what happens when our heroes fall? Should past glory be buried beneath future scandal? Can a man's worst chapter erase all the good he did before? Or maybe the better question is, what happens when the drive to win mutates into something darker? Because make no mistake, Salazar was a genius in his prime. He understood the science of suffering. He could push a body to the edge of what was humanly possible and then ask it for one more lap. But at some point, the line between coach and cult leader got real blurry. Athletes didn't just train under him, they submitted, trusted, endured, and for some, that trust came at a cost. A very personal, very painful cost. So now we sit with the contradiction. Is Alberto Salazar a product of an elite system gone wrong, or was he the architect? Did he bend the rules because everyone else was doing it, or because he believed he was too important to follow them? Either way, the answer isn't clean. Because Caribbean stories, real ones, rarely are. We are a region of fighters, survivors, hustlers, and visionaries. And sometimes, our greatest heroes carry the deepest flaws. Sometimes the man who ran from a revolution ends up starting one of his own. In sneakers, with spreadsheets, needles, and stopwatches. But no matter where you stand on Salazar, fallen genius or cautionary tale, one thing's for sure. He ran fast. He ran hard. And when it was all said and done, he ran out of time. Alberto Salazar ran from revolution, from mediocrity, from failure, and for a time, he outran them all. But no one outruns their legacy. So what do you think? Should we remember Salazar as a Caribbean-born legend who brought pride to distance running? Or has his fall from grace rewritten the story completely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you believe truth should include every chapter. Subscribe for more untold stories from across the Caribbean and diaspora, where history, controversy, and power collide. Because every legacy, even the messy ones, deserves to be heard. Thanks for watching.